Now introducing Reality Checks. Get your daily dose of reality every morning and wake up with CNT Reality Checks. Get your reality in check today. www.cnt-sa.com. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening from the Diamond Resort and Casino in Mere Park. My name is Nigel Worcestershire, and I welcome you all to the first CNT representative debates between the remaining 12 candidates. For this event, 6 candidates are in attendance, including Bex Lawson, Jordan Malone, John Woods, Grace Stone, Travis Ray, and Jacob Wheeler. CNT has created the format for this debate, which all the candidates have received and agreed to follow. For those in our live attendance, the debate rules are as follows. There will be one question directed at each candidate. Each candidate will have roughly 90 seconds to respond to the question. Following the question, there will be 3 minutes of debate among the candidates, with 2 minutes of extra leeway for direct questions being asked. There will be 2 direct questions per topic. The moderator, myself for the evening, may interrupt any candidate if I believe the candidate is straying away from the current subject matter. The candidates may not interrupt one another, and it is my responsibility and discretion, not the candidates, to enforce this rule. A full list of rules are available on the website, and for those in attendance, the full list of rules for this debate is currently available online at cnt-sa.com. The guests for the night's debate have agreed to remain quiet and not clap or boo for either candidate, so everyone can understand what the candidates are saying. Disruptive candidates may or will be removed from the event. We want to also thank the Little Teapot and Merryweather Security for their services rendered for the evening. And for those interested in any snacks for the debates, you are welcome to get up and move about for that. The order of responses in tonight's debate has been determined by the CNT Politpoll from January 1st to the 3rd. The questions for this debate have not been shared with any of the candidates and have been made up by the CNT political team, in addition to various questions fielded by the public. And if everybody is ready this evening, let us begin. The first question for the evening will be directed to candidate Travis Ray. Mr. Ray, during your AMA event, you mentioned that you believe private security firms such as Mayweather Security and SecuroServe should be contracted to protect public venues such as Legion Square and the Smelter. How do you plan to implement this policy while not overstepping boundaries of law enforcement?
Thank you, Nigel. This policy would be implemented by a contract bidding similar to the one that was already done for the protection of government officials. It would be the contracts would be open for all security firms that are looking that believe that and that believe they can perform the task at hand and are willing to be evaluated, and the final determination would be made by the legislature. This won't impact police duties, as they're only being contracted to monitor, observe, and intervene in a select area. They're not going to be given arrest and prosecution powers. Rather, we will talk about, I am open to the idea of citizens arrest, where they would be able to detain the suspect until such time as proper law enforcement authorities could arrive on the scene to handle the suspect.
All right, Mr. Ray, we will now take 2 minutes of time for the candidates, or excuse me, I apologize, 3 minutes of debate now amongst the candidates to now rebuttal Travis Ray if they would like.
If I may, something that I brought up during the AMA that wasn't fully answered was the question of liability. You can say that their job is to serially monitor and intervene, but intervention can be a legally complicated process. Would liability lie with the security company, the state, or, per your previous answer, the individual?
That'll be up to a judge to determine. Ultimately, liability is very nuanced in the common law, and thankfully, under common law, if the law doesn't exist, the determinate or the law isn't specific, the determination of the court will carry the law until such time as either the legislature or superior court overturns that decision.
I'd like to as well counter and elaborate on this one, Mr. Ray. You mean to tell me that you expect a private security firm to knowingly go into a contract with no predetermined liability, no outlined standard operating procedures, or pre-approved level of force that they can execute? They're just expected to take a contract from the state and then execute that contract and then hope that the judge rules in their favor after the fact.
No, I did not say that. I'm saying that what I'm saying is we would, of course, have an outline of standard operating procedures and the like, what would be needed and what would and would not be allowed to do. Obviously, if violating that contract would be a liability upon the individuals involved, and possibly the security company if it comes out that it was a problem with those individuals' training provided by the companies. However, at the end of the day, I believe what Ms. Lawson was referring to is the liability to the state, which again, that would
No,
have.
that's incorrect. Sorry.
Okay, would you clarify the liability that you're?
I am asking, right?
Please
so let's
mind the
say,
interruptions, Miss Lawson.
I apologize.
Would you please clarify whose liability you're concerned with, Ms. Lawson?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? If you look at the continuum of force that private security have in this state, it's very limited. You essentially don't have a lot of ground between a polite talking to and a gunfight. Therefore, you're going to end up with legally complicated situations, and you're going to end up with private citizens suing. In that case, who would hold legal liability? The state, the company, or the individual?
And again, liability is to be determined, but it's situational. I can't answer that because you're asking for a specific situation answer for a broad context of different liabilities. Any one of those could be a factor in the incident, and that will need to be determined. And that's the adversarial process in the court of law is how we do determine liability.
That is going to be time there on this topic. If there's any more direct questions about it, I will allow 2 more minutes for that. All right. Sure thing. So moving on here, the next question of the evening is going to be directed to candidate Jacob Wheeler. You're the most recent founder of the successful security service, Merryweather. Do you feel it's a conflict of interest for you to run with Merryweather being awarded the government contract?
I do not feel as though it's a conflict of interest. Merryweather Security was actually responsible for writing a proposed bill to the states. We defined outlines for what we thought a security bill should look like, and then that bill was opened up to the public. We won that bid through a public process against another company, and should I be a state representative when that bid resets in 4 months, I would excuse myself from voting on the company's ability to be re-awarded that bid.
All right, we can now take 3 minutes of discussion amongst the candidates about the topic. Do any of the candidates need a refresh?
Mr. Wheeler, I just had a quick question. If elected to office, would you be willing to put your interest in the company into a trust so that we have so that the people have confidence that you're not in a state of conflict of interest?
I currently already have made steps, Mr. Ray, for this potentiality. I have a co-owner listed for Merryweather Security, and should it be a conflict of interest moving forward in a possible capacity as state rep, I would be willing to shift myself possibly as no longer owner of the company and into an advisory role.
Any other candidates? Sure thing. Moving along.
Thank you.
The next question we have for the evening is going to be dedicated to candidate John Woods. Oh. Was Mr. Woods not able to attend?
I do not believe
All
he'll
right.
be participating.
Sure thing. So, moving along furthermore, Mr. Jordan Malone, how do you plan on juggling your other job and businesses with being a state representative?
Well, if I was to become a state representative, I would have to step down from Malone Modeling Agency. As stated, can't own a business while being state rep. And along with Ari's Deli, I would be an advisor helping out Morgan and Miguel. But unfortunately, I would not be able to assist them in going on the clock with them.
So you plan on totally removing yourself from your roles at your current businesses?
Correct.
Sure thing. Any other candidates have any response to Mr. Malone?
If I may.
Sure.
Mr. Malone, would you be able to dedicate more than 3+ hours at a time to state representative meetings?
Yes.
Any other candidates have any direct questions for Mr. Malone?
Mr. Malone, do you recall which rule stated that legislators are not allowed to own businesses?
State representatives?
Or state representatives are legislators?
Correct. State representatives cannot own businesses. For example, when Castor Taylor becomes state representative, he had to step down from Burger Shot. It'd be the same situation for me for MMA.
All right.
Which you have previously stated you plan on removing yourself from.
Correct.
Correct. Just wanted to make that clear. Any other candidates?
Mr. Malone, I'm curious how your experience running a modeling agency and working as a deli would translate into being a state legislator.
In what sense do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, those are two skills. You've worked in a professional field. How would you be able to bring that personal experience to your role as a state representative?
I want to bring that role as a state representative in the sense that I would try and help out the people as a whole. I'm a very big people person. I work with people 24/7, serving people food, or even work with them in photo shoots and so on and so forth. But the main thing is that because having people skills and learning legislative law and just studying and going to court trials, I feel that I do have a sense of knowledge when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Ms. Lawson, it seems like what you're implying is that only a select set of professions can perform this task. Now, I thought the reason why our democracy is great is because any individual can rise to the occasion of representing their fellow citizens in government.
Well, I think that's certainly an uncharitable way to read it. It's interesting. I actually have a background in fashion myself, which was inspired the question. I found that working on Clout magazine brought me in contact with local businesses and people, and it actually widened my perspective. That was sort of the angle I was coming from. I hope that adds a little clarity to your perspective.
Yes, thank you for the clarity, Representative.
Sure thing. Are there any other candidates who would like to take the floor here in the next 20 seconds that we have dedicated to the topic? All right, then we will move along to the next question of the evening, dedicated to candidate Grace Stone. Ms. Stone, do you believe your past criminal ties will prevent you from being unbiased towards government departments?
I don't believe so, and this is why. As a criminal, you are presented with biases every day with the people that you work for, both legally and criminally. Because of that, I don't see an issue as in terms of being biased towards anything. It just gives me a different perspective, not necessarily a bias.
All right. We will now take time for anyone else to take the floor in response to Ms. Stone. No candidates? No questions directly for Ms. Stone here?
Ms. Stone,
Go ahead, Bex.
Ms. Lawson.
during your, I won't ask too many questions about your past, obviously, but I'm wondering, did you ever find yourself in a situation where you felt were at odds with, say, police brutality or police overreach? And if so, would that influence your thoughts on policy?
I did find myself at times where I believe that there was maybe not police brutality, but police unprofessionalism quite a few times. I don't believe that will change my opinion or my bias on certain things rather than just my perspective on personal beliefs. But as a state representative, you're meant to separate your personal beliefs from factual.
Of course, thank you.
Mr. Ray?
Yes, Ms. Stone, I don't really have a challenge to your statement. I just wanted to add my own beliefs. When I was working as a defense attorney, I met people who were in your situation every day. And I think what a lot of people who've never been arrested, never been in that kind of life, fail to recognize is that they're individuals as well. And they get into crime for a number of reasons. They're not mustache twirling evil beings. And I applaud your effort to make peace with your past and redeem yourself. And I hope you seek recognition from the public, and no matter which way the race goes, that you have become a better person.
Absolutely. I don't believe I am less of a better person or more of a better person due to my criminal history, and I have sought recognition and forgiveness in accordance to the law. But thank you.
All right, if anybody else has anything for Miss Stone?
I just have a quick question as far as how long has it been since you've been involved in your criminal proclivities, Miss Stone?
About 3 months and something, I believe now.
Okay.
So 3 months from your last prosecution?
Yes, sir.
Sure thing. Any other candidates? All right, moving along. This question is directed for State Representative incumbent Bex Lawson. Ms.
Of
Lawson,
course.
absolutely. Your bill, H.R. 034, the Conflict of Interest Act, was voted against by yourself and 3 of your colleagues. How would you support other anti-corruption bills?
Great question. I'm glad I get the chance to address this. The conflict of interest bill was kind of my baby throughout the first Congress. And I think something that is overlooked in our role as a potential role as state representatives is the fact that you have to get it through completion. It must be approved by all representatives and signed. So with the conflict of interest bill, as my first bill, there were some structural problems. It was both too far reaching and not far reaching enough. Ideally, I would like to return to a lot of the core principles in that bill. I think having to recuse yourself from conflict of interest votes with a public explanation as to why is extremely good. I think there are things about, for instance, the limits on gifts that you can purchase a candidate or a candidate can purchase for a potential voter. I think that is another solid pillar. But a bill is a piece of legal language that must pass several barriers. As it was my first attempt at writing legal language, it didn't get there. Since then, I have become bar certified, and I feel like I've earned enough on-the-job experience that I'm interested to return to the issue with fresh eyes in the second draft.
Can I ask why you shot down your own bill? Was that an effort of self-preservation among your colleagues?
No. It was essentially that I had spoken to my colleagues. We have regular meetings. I knew that Mr. Nash wanted to speak with Mr. Gordon about several changes and potential scope additions. It was at a point where I feel like, again, a lot of state rep is paperwork and it's time management and it's just very boring administrative work. I looked at what we had to do. I looked at how much time the Conflict of Interest Act. I made the choice to kill my darling in an attempt to get more done.
All right, that's going to be time, Ms. Lawson. We'll now take time for any of the other candidates to respond.
Yes, Ms. Lawson, I've had some experience with conflict of interest acts and the like. I've read extensively. Would you be in favor of financial disclosure for all elected officials? And in addition to this, I noticed that was absent from the thing, and I feel for the general public, it would be important to know what the candidates are, how the candidates made their money and through what means, and what financial holdings they have, be it liquid or otherwise assets.
I think that's a very reasonable suggestion, sure.
Any other candidates? Have anything for Miss Lawson? All right, we now have another round of questions we're going to be moving through for each candidate, and I'll start back around to candidate Travis Ray. As a once long-time reporter for Weasel and then CNT, why should anyone think that you're prepared to be in office?
Well, Nigel, the reason why is because I'm not doing anything different than what I was doing when I worked for both Weasel and CNT. I go out, I go talk to people, I go listen to what their troubles are, and then I look for solutions. As a reporter, it's my job to bring the story to the people, and as a state rep, it would be my job to bring the story to the lawmakers so that we can craft a better society.
All right, Mr. Ray. We will now take time for the candidates to respond. Does anyone have anything for candidate Travis Ray?
If I may.
Sure thing.
To better explain, or allow yourself to better explain this, are you saying that the job as a CNT reporter is the same as a state representative?
No, but it relies on similar skill sets. It's going out and listening to what other people are experiencing and processing that and trying to find the truth in the matter and try and craft that truth into something that can have lasting impact on the way that our society is being run, our laws are being constructed, and the people are being kept safe by the government, and the people are being kept informed.
Absolutely. I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You were fired multiple times from your CNT job as a reporter. Do you feel like that will have any effects as a state representative, since you cannot be fired so easily as a state representative?
I was not fired from CNT. I was suspended pending a decision. Ultimately, that decision was found in my favor, and I returned. The most recent departure from CNT was voluntarily, so I would not put CNT and myself into conflict of interest while on the campaign trail.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Travis, as you know, we worked together at CNT. I was your manager in the newsroom. During that time, we ran into a conflict where, despite being a news writer specifically covering serial killers, you were also doing the bar to become a defense attorney. I would like to revisit that decision. Do you still have the same understanding of conflict of interest? And would you bring that into your role as a state representative?
I did the bar to be a lawyer. You don't have to be a defense attorney to be a lawyer. I only got into the defense work when I found that my work as a lawyer could be beneficial to people who are in trouble with the law. I am a firm believer in the work of our founding father, John Adams, who defended British soldiers who shot into the who instigated the Boston Massacre, because he felt that everyone is entitled to competent defense. And at the time I entered that career, there was at the time I passed the bar, there were very few defense attorneys. There still are today. The private practicing defense attorney is very rare in this state. And so that's when I made that switch, and I began practice of both criminal defense and civil litigation which is how I maintained a position in CNT as their head of the legal department.
I have a real quick question.
Sure thing.
Yes.
You talk a lot about John Adams, Mr. Ray, and say how you want to help craft laws and your background with your bar.
Hmm.
You were disbarred, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all.
I do want to say about that my disbarment was a mistake. Was a mistake on my part, and as a wise man once told me, everyone makes mistakes, and there's no shame in that. The only shame is if you never learn from it, and I do believe I've learned from the mistakes that led to my disbarment, and I'm presently working for readmittance into the bar. There's been several delays due to the recent change in
That is going to
the
be
Chief
time,
Justice.
Mr. Ray. I do apologize. There will be 2 extra minutes we can dedicate for direct questions if any other candidates have any.
I have a question regarding your disbarment, unless it's too off topic.
I believe that was the current topic, so I will
Okay.
allow it.
Before in a conversation with me, Travis Ray, you mentioned that the judge's verdict on your disbarment was biased. Do you mind evaluating into that?
Yes, there was at least one judge on the panel. I don't wish to drag that individual's name into this, but there was one judge on the panel who I was informed well after the decision to disbar me. That person had been seeking my disbarment for some time. They had some grudge against me. I don't know the nature of. But I do believe that there was a little bit of a bias in the decision, yes.
Any other candidates have direct questions? And a
If
minute and
I-
30 seconds
yes.
left for questions.
If I may, Mr. Ray, you haven't had a scoop since the Charlie Bradstock scandal, and you're currently disbarred from a lawyer. What about your current profession? You speak a lot about values, but I'm wondering what professional successes you can point to that would allow you to sort of have a better perspective as a state representative.
Bex, I don't believe. I believe you did make an incorrect assessment of my career. I don't specialize in serial killers. I was an investigative journalist. Serial killers happen to call me quite frequently, and in those instances, I immediately gave everything that was discussed during those phone calls over to the police. That evidence was used to put away several. Serial killers, including, among others, the Fertilizer, the first known serial killer in the state, as well as the Forget-Me-Not Killer. So there are successes. Not everything I've done that is a success is in the public light.
We're going to be wrapping up there. Moving on to our next round of questions here for Mr. Jacob Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler, in the past, you've worked for a game change in government, specifically protesting DOCL requirements. Is that effective? And are you still for change in DOCL?
I am for certain targeted changes in DOCL. I believe that they could do with a little bit of less regulations on business owners, and there could be more transparency regarding their processes as far as how they come up with premises taxes and other things that are not currently accessible to the public or current business owners. The business liaison position that previously was held by Castor Taylor has been completely abandoned, with no one fulfilling his seat as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I'm aware. And I believe that there needs to be a better line of communication. I have nothing personally against any members of DOCL. I think they've done great work with the resources that have been afforded to them in their time. And it's simply a matter of changes in procedure, not against any certain individuals.
Absolutely. We'll now take 3 minutes of discussion time if anyone has anything for candidate Wheeler.
Mr. Wheeler, Would you be, I think, able to maintain a line of communications with DOCL? Do you think you would be able to sort of mesh with their workflow in a position as a state representative, or like do you anticipate struggling communicating with them in any way?
I don't foresee any struggle communicating. I think that my capacity as state rep, if anything, should improve that line of communication. I think currently there is a general consensus among sub business owners that I've talked to that there currently is a difficult line of communication. That may be from lack of education on their part, that they don't know the proper channels to take. And I think that that is a frequent occurrence. But in a capacity as state rep, I look forward to working with them. And I think that that would be a better method of doing so.
Any other candidates want to weigh in on the discussion?
I would like to point out that there would be some difficulty as a state rep in San Andreas in the ability to actually inquire into the nature of DOCL's decision-making practices. Presently, right now, San Andreas state representatives do not have the ability to instigate any sort of hearing. These are vitally important for the ability to oversight abilities that most legislatures have on the executive branches, such as DOCL. This would probably need some amendment into our present constitution, but we should be, as legislatures, we should be working to extend the checks and balances on the executive and the judiciary so that we can better understand what's going on and craft legislation that they'll have to implement.
Minute left of time on the topic. If anybody else would like to weigh in.
Speaking in my capacity as a state representative, I have had great success talking with them. We've had several meetings about situations like nonprofits. I do find, there are obviously issues within the department, as there are any department, but I don't see the need for hearings or any sort of that. Mr. Wheeler, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll let you continue after that.
I was simply going to say the same, is that I was not in any capacity suggesting that in a position as state rep, I would be imposing any hearings or anything of that nature. The current legislator outlined the current powers of the COC, or the Department of Commerce and Labor, as they're now called, through legislation. And I think that it's simply it's a partnership, if anything, to simply hear, it's a double-sided issue, how they have frustrations as well as so do the business owners, and extending that line of communication. No one is suggesting that there's hearings or audits or anything of that nature. The question is how I would be able to communicate with them, and I think it'd be better as a state rep.
That's going to be time there on
Thank
that
you.
topic. We can now take 2 minutes. If anyone has any directed questions for candidate Wheeler, I'll take them now. All right. So moving along for the next question.
Don't get caught out in that stormy weather, feller. Get yourself a CNT umbrella. You know what's better than being wetter? Having a CNT umbrella. Get on down to CNT and get yourself one today. www.cnt-sa.com.
Mr. Malone, why should someone vote for you instead of someone in public office with maybe more experience?
That's actually a great question. One thing that I do want to point out is that I'm very people friendly. I'm an honest person. I love working with the public, and it's just something that I believe that people that have the right criteria and are good with just people in general, or even know government legislature as a whole, they should get a chance in office. It's just something that I believe that if you have something good to show and you have stuff on the plate that you bring to the table, you might bring a chance, and it should be fair play.
Absolutely, Mr. Malone. If that's your time, we'll now take 3 minutes of group discussion if anyone wants to weigh in on Mr. Malone's question.
Yes, Mr. Malone. Something I'm curious about is you speak about being people-friendly, being great at building up relationships. That's fantastic. But how have you done that in the modeling industry so far? Can you point towards any partnerships, long-term initiatives? Have you been building people relationships in your current field, or are you just talking about how you will do it in your next one?
Nope, I have been doing it. I've been doing endorsements with other just people who have been working with each other, or even like been trying to work with like Phyllis Waverly, for example, in her Swell magazine. Just other photographers and just working with other models that work also with Sally Nailberry as well. So it's just kind of like a community type thing. We all work with each other.
Quick question for you. You commonly and continually say that you're people friendly, and that's wonderful. However, as a state representative, you're going to be having to deal with quite a large amount of criticism, not only from the public, but maybe even from your peers. Will you be able to handle that pressure?
Absolutely.
Following up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Ray, please.
Yes. And actually, Bex, I was going to comment on your thing. One of the, I think, what I fail to recognize is everyone who runs for this office is going to have to start somewhere. It could be Bex, that you're at the end of all of this, you're the only person in the legislature who has had any experience. It could be yourself and the other 4 candidates on stage with you. That'll be the next 5 reps of the state. And even yourself, only 6 months ago, you had no representative experience, no legislative experience that I'm aware of. So, I think at this point we're all, the only advantage that you have over us is that you've been doing the job longer, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something unique that Mr. Malone brings to the table that you yourself might not have experienced, having been doing something completely different for the past 6 months.
Absolutely. Part of the reason why I asked was to see whether he has had practical skills that can transfer into office, because cultivating those skills is incredibly possible. Like I said, I did it with clout as well. But when it comes to being a state representative, I also know that there's a lot of technical writing needed, and there's a lot of what is essentially paperwork. If Mr. Malone is people friendly, that's fantastic. But there's going to be a healthy amount of paperwork, technical writing, and just herding cats are necessary as well. I was attempting to see whether he had any sort of large-scale collaborations that might point towards an ability to do that, just to clarify my intention.
Sure thing. That's going to be time on the group discussion. I apologize, Mr. Ray. I will allow Mr. Malone, if he would like to weigh back into the group discussion as a final word.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to say that just even going from just typing up papers in college and just doing paperwork on the daily with REs and with my company as a whole, I'm used to doing paperwork. That's not going to be an issue at all. In fact, if I need to do paperwork for hours on end, that's more than plentiful. Then we'll be done.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Malone. We're going to be moving on now to 2 minutes of direct questions if anyone has them. Does anyone, any candidates or the incumbent, have any direct questions for Mr. Malone? Sure thing. So moving on to the next question of the evening will be directed at candidate Greystone. Stone, what experience leads you to believe that you have the ability to bring forward change involving laws and government?
A massive amount of experience from one of the largest majorities in the city. The largest majority in the city are people who do, in one way or the other, some type of criminal activity, whether that is their main job or as a side gig when they need money. As of the moment, there is no one in legislative or as a representative that has major criminal history and therefore has the experience to deal with those things and those questions and those laws that come with that.
Sure thing, Miss Stone. Well, now I have 3 minutes of group discussion if anyone would like to weigh into Miss Stone's topic.
Absolutely. I'm interested to chip in. I actually see the advantages to what you're saying, Ms. Stone. For instance, there was a discussion where PD came to us to ask us about money laundering and realized to his chagrin that none of the state reps had ever dealt with the economics or factors of it, and as such could not have a conversation. That being said, you've been pardoned for 3 months. With the rapidly changing economy and the chaotic state of the city, how do you know your knowledge is still relevant?
the majority of mechanics involving, how if someone robs a bank or if someone robs a store, or as you said, bans, usually remains the same. It's just the players in the game that changes over time. And that's usually widely available for anyone to see from their own eyes, from a personal perspective.
Thank you.
Even then, to give an example, right now we're currently experiencing of what might be the beginnings of a major gang war, and if you don't have contact with people who have been in that life, you might not know the politics behind that, and they are quite intricate. So it's beneficial not only for crafting legislation, but for understanding what type of reaction that is going to get from the criminal community, and how that's going to affect them, and how they might potentially react to that.
Forgive me, was it a question or a statement?
That was more of a statement to. That was more of a follow-up on Bex's question.
Understood. Thank you.
We have a minute left of group discussion on the topic. If any of the candidates want to weigh in.
You said that there was currently no other candidate or state representatives that had a criminal background that you were aware of, and somehow that implies that we are, or they are, less educated or informed to speak on laws regarding to criminal activity?
If you have not done an action yourself, can you be 100% sure that you know from a personal standpoint? That doesn't necessarily mean that others are not capable or knowledgeable enough to address those issues or laws. It just means that people who have personal experience may have a different insight.
Well, see, I believe that you could accomplish the same thing, if not greater things, by simply bringing people that may have that background to the table and having the proper conversations. Maybe those conversations aren't had. I don't think that possessing or having a criminal experience is any sort of a benefit or advantage over any candidate or representative that may not.
As
That's
is
all.
your professional opinion, of course.
It was just an opinion that I was
Right, and that is going to be time there as well. All right, we'll now take 2 minutes of directed questions for candidate Stone, if anyone has any.
Ms. Stone, I actually have one question for you. Most of my knowledge and experience of my knowledge of how the criminal underworld operates comes from the discussions I had with my clients, many of which are privileged. But it did inform me a lot that I didn't know before I started my defense attorney work. But is there anything that would there be any difference between my understanding and knowledge versus what you could bring to the table?
It's hard for me to answer that because I personally haven't been in your shoes or your situation. I haven't seen you talk with your clients, nor will I be ever privileged to know what you've discussed with your clients. I can only speak for what I know personally, as in I've personally done these things, and you have heard things. And hearing versus physically doing, I would say there is a bit of a difference.
Yes, but when you're working as a defense attorney, you encourage your clients to tell you as much as possible, because the best defense I can provide is based on a knowledge of what is actually going on. So there is extensive knowledge that you acquire by that, and many of my clients have been very open with me.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Stone? Sure thing. So moving on. Next question will be directed again at State Representative incumbent Bex Lawson. Ms. Lawson, in the second Congress, bills were held up for various reasons. A number of bills are yet to be signed. How would you prevent bills from stagnating on the governor's desk?
This is a great question, and it's something that was obviously a big problem throughout the Second Congress. As of this moment, I believe that there are 2 acts that are currently unsigned. That is the Ice Cream for Americans Act, which is a UBI increase on which the governors and representatives have had a spirited disagreement. And the other is, I believe, a audit of public works, which was unfortunately held up due to circumstances such as the death of the arbiter of public works with whom we were handling the audit. Now, that being said, that still is a problem. I know with the Speedy Trial Act, a piece of legislation that kind of sat on Mr. Paxton's desk for far too long, we ended up working with the Department of Justice in an active role to not just bring it to his desk, but force him to say, if you do not want to sign this, why do you not want to sign this? I have grown increasingly comfortable with this kind of proactive communication, and I have strong communication with all departments, so I intend to very much be in active communication with the governor and lieutenant governor to ensure that bills are looked at and addressed in a meaningful time frame.
Absolutely. We'll now take 3 minutes of group discussion. If anybody would like to weigh in on Ms. Lawson's topic.
So I'll take a first stab at this. There actually is a practical solution, one that's been implemented in many other states and our federal government. That is you'll pardon, I forget the term, but if the president does not sign on a bill passed by Congress within a allotted amount of time, the bill still becomes the law without his signature. The signature is a form of protest many presidents and governors in other states use to say that while they disagree with the law, they recognize that it was passed by an unvetoable majority or veto-proof majority, and therefore they will let it pass, but they will not give their assent to it. It's been perfectly valid in many other situations. I have family that live in a state where the governor and the majority power in the state legislature are of different parties. It happens quite frequently. I think if that is not the common law rule that we use, it needs to be adapted into our Constitution immediately to solve this problem.
While that is a fascinating bit of trivia, Mr. Ray, I don't agree with it as a solution. Right now, with the 7-day hold for the public to put in their feedback, as well as the communication between representatives at weekly allotted times, I think there's already enough choke points in the system. Having the governor sit on a bill for a few days just for a statement doesn't sit right for me. Instead, as if I am reelected, I intend to focus on communication between governments so we can have conversations like adults and discuss why something is being vetoed and what changes need to be made.
So then the question becomes, Ms. Lawson, why hasn't it been signed? These bills have been voted on and passed by the legislature, and yet the governor hasn't acknowledged it. In fact,
Just
some of
to
them
clarify.
have not even been changed to the bill passed in the legislative markups.
Ms.
Just to
Lawson, you have the
clarify,
floor.
I apologize for interrupting earlier.
No, don't worry. That's
Just
fine.
to clarify, 2 of them are not signed, as I previously mentioned. The UBI increase, the Ice Cream for Americans Act, and the Public Works audit. Everything else has been signed. So you're not correct in your assessment that there are still things waiting. There are certainly ways we could improve the administrative load. If there are things that need to be changed to the correct allotment, I'll definitely take a look at it at my earliest convenience and ensure that's done. Thank you.
Can you clarify how many bills are currently signed?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I would have to check. I know that recently we've done the Speedy Trial Act, the Protection Against Urgent Act threat updates, the Department of Human Services Act. Those are definitely the larger ones. I believe the Recycling Act and possibly changes made to the Autobahn Act. Again, because we're not using electronics, I can't double check
Right,
that for you.
sure thing. I appreciate that, Miss Lawson, and thank you. That is going to be time. I'm sorry, Mr. Ray, that's going to be time. I even allowed you guys to go a bit over there. We are going to move into 2 minutes of directed questions at Miss Lawson, if any candidates have them.
Ms.
Yes,
Lawson,
Mr. Lawson.
go ahead, Grace.
Ms. Stone, you have the floor.
Thank you. You said a little bit about communication being better In your opinion, as a state representative, how could state representatives be better at communicating for laws?
Great question. This was something that we ran into early in the second Congress, and it's something that lasted too long because, well, if you don't have communication, it's hard to miss bad communication. We had animal cruelty acts on the books with Public Works, and we essentially had something where we had assigned Mr. James Knock to address it, and he was stuck in sort of an email back and forth with the Rangers. It's one of those misunderstandings that, you know, when you don't understand it's a possibility, it's easy to miss. As Secretary of the Legislature, that's something where I intend to take a much more active role, checking in with everyone. You know, obviously everyone has their own independent projects and priorities, but something that I did was work on a Trello, and I would expand that, checking in with other departments, making sure we have timelines on progress, and essentially being a project manager.
Absolutely, thank you.
Ms. Representative Lawson, could you clarify something for me? Because I was reading the Speedy Trial Act earlier just today, and Representative Nash filed several amendments to it following the vote. At the time I read it, it had not yet been signed by the governor or moved past the voting stage.
If that's the case, I believe the circumstances are that the vote has gone through. You are correct that there have been several amendments. Like I said, the Department of Justice actually kind of campaigned in this instance to have their amendments and their thoughts pushed. And the governor and the DOJ have been in a very active discussion. Obviously, I think I can acknowledge that clarity is an important part, and we've clearly slipped up a little on that. It should be as obvious to the public as it is to the DOJ and the representatives, but this is something that is very much
So would you say that the bill has lapsed back into unpassed because of these amendments? Or is it
No.
passed in these amendments were just written into the bill?
The amendments written into the bill are what are needed to get it passed. It will be signed by the governor shortly, is my current understanding.
So we
And
just
that is
wrote
going to be
in-
time there, Mr. Ray. I do apologize. That is going to be our time for the evening, as that was our final question. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all for attending the first representative debates. We will have the full video and highlights available on our website soon at cnt-sa.com. And we want to be sure you'll tune in to the next debate, which will be our gubernatorial debate, Tuesday, January the 12th, 2022 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at the Diamond Casino. And furthermore, at the second representative debate, which will be held here again on the 12th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Once again, thank you all of the candidates who attended here. Thank you for your time and safe travels, everyone on their way home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.